tree. I love running.
Yeah.
I love going out for a run every day. That's about it. Just love life. It's always been an interesting life, never boring.
Yeah. Wow. That's an incredible story. You got a lot of things together. I was going through your profile on Wiki, and I saw that you got 2 masters, PhD. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then you're in the military. You serve in the military
Yes.
and in the parliament. I was like, man, this is a huge inspiration. Learning as much as you can and helping in every way possible. So thank you so much for your service in the military, which you're still doing now, which is amazing. Interesting.
Well, actually, to be honest, it's not always been easy in my life. So, for instance, growing up, I was actually homeless as a child with my mother here in Canada. My mom used to call it camping. So, our life wasn't always easy. I remember, I never had a washing machine until I was, well in my 20s. Used to always have to take my washing in a big gigantic bag with me on the city bus, go down the street and put my quarters in the machine to wash it. So I know what it's like not to have a lot of either food or good shoes, sometimes good quality clothing. I remember being in junior high and only really having, a few pairs of t-shirts and, a couple pairs of pants, and you haven't washed your clothes very often, so they kind of maybe smell a little funny because you just don't have the money to be able to afford to go down to the laundromat every day or nor the time. And, it was quite, sometimes it was quite difficult. It was hard in some respects. But the thing that always kept me going was the knowledge that my mother loved me an awful lot, that my father loved me as well, and in his own way, and that my mom always used to believe that if I worked really hard and applied myself to getting an education and to whatever it is that I chose my profession in, that I could succeed at it, and I could do quite well. And that's part of the reason I remember she was kind of looking for free things for me to do, me and my younger brother. And she said, well, you know what, there's this free youth program for you. It's called Cadets, and I'm going to sign you up. And, she went down and dragged me down, and I complained for all the way down there. And my mom said, don't worry, you're going to have a good time. Your brother wants to do it. If you don't, try it for a couple months, and even if you don't like it, we'll see and we'll think about it afterwards. And I ended up loving it. It was absolutely fantastic. I traveled across the country. I had fun training. They gave me a uniform. They fed me, so I was happy as a youth. Lots of food to eat, and I learned about serving one's country, serving something greater than yourself, serving for the love of others. I know it's kind of strange that you might learn that in cadets or in the military, but sometimes you're asked to help someone out that you've never really known very well or don't know much about, yet you do it because simply it is your duty and expected of you, and you know that they will do the exact same thing for you in your time of need. And so it was a great experience. I've had some terrible experiences as well in the military with some racism. Black, Indigenous peoples of color have all faced quite a bit of racism within the military. But at the end of the day, I also find the vast majority of people are actually fantastic, great people who, want to also contribute to making the world a better place in their own way.
Wow, man, that's amazing. And looking at the military, I kind of have a little parts of military because one of my elder brothers was in the Nigerian Air Force, and then so I went to live with him in the Air Force base for about 3 years before I actually went for my post-secondary program and then coming to Canada. So whenever I see people in the uniform, I always have great respect for them because I know what it means. Not that personal experience, but I know seeing my brother.
From viewing up front and up close what's going on.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, so my next question would be, you already touched on it, is when or how did you start your career?
Well, it started really when I was 19 years old. I was at university, and I was, I had just left the cadet movement, which is the youth kind of a military program sponsored by the Canadian government. And I was looking, I needed an employment, and my brother was working at the A&W at minimum wage and not doing very well. He was kind of hungry, and I had a student loan, and I said, well, and I was talking to my mom about it, I said, why don't you join the military, see where that gets you? And so I went down, and I saw the naval recruiting officer, and I started my paperwork, and they signed me up, and off it went. I was like literally 2 months later, I was on my basic training course in Montreal, and just outside of Montreal, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, which is a small, recruit training center. And it was a great, I had a great time. Actually, it was the funnest time I've ever had in my life. The camaraderie with the men and the women there in my platoon. 9630 Bravo, that was the name of the platoon. We won the Commandant's pennant or flag because we were, marched around, I guess, quite well. I got amazing shape. And then after that, I finished my bachelor's degree and just kind of, I had the opportunity of going to Quebec, eventually joining the Royal 22nd Regiment, which is an infantry unit in Quebec City. And they taught me how to speak French. I didn't know French in Alberta because there's not a lot of need for it. As you know, sometimes here in Manitoba, we don't always have the opportunity to speak French, but they gave me, I think I became bilingual. I really put myself to the task, and I was bilingual after about 4 or 5 months. Wow. It was hard work, but a lot of fun. Je parlais français tous les jours avec tous des amis. And even when the francophones and people, they wanted to try and practice their English with me, I refused to speak English with them. I only spoke French to make sure I could get ahead and learn the language properly. In fact, actually, I'll tell you a crazy story. My mom came to visit at some point after maybe a year and a half of me being in Quebec, and she came to visit, and I paid for the ticket, and out she flew. She's staying with me. I think for the first 5 days, when she was staying at my place, I couldn't remember all my English words. So sometimes I was talking to her and I'm throwing French words at her, and some days it was the full sentence was in French, and she's looking at me like, "Oh, don't you remember your English?" And I was like, "Well, I'm really kind of like been working on the French all day long, so it's hard to remember what it is that how the English language sounds
like." Wow, that's amazing. Whatever you want to do, just challenge yourself to and put your best in to do it, and you're doing them excellently. So wow, that's inspiring to to hear.
Don't fear failure. Don't fear the failure. Because the worst off that would happen is if I went there and I didn't learn French very well, I would have learned French a little bit, but not very well, and I would have still had a chance to learn and try something different, and I would have known maybe I'm not good at languages.
So never fear failure. Yeah, just try it. If it works out, that's cool. If it doesn't, move something else. So that's really good. Then, so which should lead me to my next question is, and what keeps you going despite the challenges you face?
I think I actually had a chance to think about this over the past year with the pandemic. It's been an opportunity to rethink our place in the world and what we're doing with our lives. You could do business or other things, and everyone has their own passion. But what really passions me is actually really trying to leave a really positive mark on the world. And, I kind of thought about I've had friends say, oh, you should be working on your pension and trying to, play it safe and be very, very even keel. And I kind of go, well, I'm not really actually interested in that, to be honest. Maybe tomorrow I'll pass away, or, maybe I'll pass away in 40 years, or maybe in another 50 years, maybe in my 90s, or when I'm over 100 years old, who knows? But I want to be able to look back at my life and be able to say, well, these are the things that I was able to accomplish and how I was able to improve the world around me and the impact I had on other people's lives. And I want to be able to look myself in that the mirror, in fact, to be able to do that. And that was kind of what I was thinking about when I was the Member of Parliament. I used to work over 100 hours a week for 4 years straight, very, very few vacations. In fact, actually, most of my vacations were working vacations, so I combined them with doing some other parliamentary work at the same time to kind of keep gaining more knowledge. But I'm quite proud, actually, about the work I was able to accomplish with my team, what we were able to do together, what I was able to do with what we were able to do in the riding with the citizens, how we collaborated, how we were able to build, a kind of a better Canada, like whether it was child poverty and the new Canada Child Benefit for children, whether it was increasing the amounts for funding for seniors or Canada Summer Jobs for students, or really trying to look after people who are coming in the office with immigration issues, refugee claims. I remember the Adeo family who just recently were in the news here in Winnipeg. Their son was killed 2 years ago in a home invasion in the West End, and it's absolutely terrible. But they had family members that wanted to come to Canada. I was able to speak with the minister to make sure that the family were able to enter Canada, to be there at the funeral, to support the mother and the father who had lost their son, and that was a gratifying moment. But I wasn't able to do that by myself. It was part of a whole team and a whole community that was pushing for that, and I'm quite proud about that. And that's kind of what motivates me. Working with people, whether evangelical Christians from church or even people at the mosque, looking for the commonalities between us and trying to find out how we can work together to make our city a better place, our province a better place, and in essence, our country.
That's good. And now talking about the evangelical, I think I remember seeing you in a church one time. I believe that was in 2017, 2018, the Redeemed Church on Sergeant.
Oh yes, that was in 2018 and 2019 as well. That was a very good time.
That's good. So my next question would be, if you have a goal or other ambition that you're able to share, what will be your next goal?
I think my goal or ambition that I have is really, I want to try and continue the work that I was doing in Parliament because I really want to make people's lives better. I want to try and build a better community for each and every one of us together. We need to be able to work together. Sometimes when you look at politics today, you see, that group's over here and that group's over here. And there's not a lot of sometimes discourse or the discussion, the conversations we have are so negative sometimes that we fail to see our commonality and the things that we can do to really work together, whether it's on poverty or drug addiction or even just spirituality. What does it mean to be a human being in this world? In the beginning of our conversation, you talked about the pandemic. When I was the MP, I used to send out a Christmas card to almost every citizen in Winnipeg Centre. And I was surprised by the number of people who would call me up and say, this was my only Christmas card this year. The sense of loneliness that exists in our communities, a sense of isolation. And I think this needs to become part of the public discussion because this actually impacts our mental health. It impacts how we feel, which has an impact then on our healthcare system. But really, the basis, we look at what a real community means, and we all know what a real community is. It's the one where we're interconnected, where we're talking, where we're discussing, where we have relationships, where we care for others. Or we can have a community which doesn't talk to each other, which doesn't care for the other person next door, or the neighbor, or what's happening down the street. But I think most people at the end of the day would say we want to have a strong community with good relationships where you are able to talk to your neighbor.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important. And yeah, this is a lot of inspiration on the things you do and how are you able to transition between the different roles and how you've been building the communities together. That's really incredible. You're doing these things even for not just for yourself, but looking at the future. And that's another thing that I find very important for me. Anything I'm doing now, I'm not just doing it to see that Christian can do this, right? But I'm looking at if 5 years, 10 years along the line, I'll be able to look back and say, hey, what did you do when you were 25 or at this point in your life? I want to be able to see that I've made tangible impact in the lives of others. That's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yes, that is so true.
My next question would be, what would be your final thought or final words to anyone out there?
I think we can make a difference in the world around us. I know some people are at home wondering what it is they can do, but I think this is an opportunity for us to think about our future, that we can collectively be thinking about, what we can do on a personal or individual level to make the world a better place. And whether that is like just going to school and getting your education, working hard at your job, paying your taxes, being kind to your children, volunteering once in a while at your children's school. There are so many things you could do to really improve the world around us.